Greetings Internet, DDA here, and welcome to the final Set 2 list that I'm going to be pushing out for Star Wars Unlimited. Luke Skywalker has been the leader that I've played the most, and I'll be honest, I almost didn't push out this list for everyone and post it online just because I've only played during the Set 2 meta for about 10% of the effort that I put into Set 1. I like to make sure that all the lists I post are refined and competitive unless I upfront say that it's an unrefined list. And as such, I didn't feel like I had the experience to put out this list until the very end of the set. After going through the ringer and making several changes to the deck, I do feel like this Luke Skywalker list is in the best place that it's going to get for the set. It's fairly competitive, although it definitely lost some power from set 1 to set 2. While the hero red decks and the yellow villain decks got huge power boosts in set 2, yellow hero and blue hero did not get that many power boosts. So while I felt like this was a tier 1 list in set 1, in set 2 it's probably closer to tier 2. The green deck might be better just because Home 1 is still a great card. However, there is something special about smacking the opponent for 11 damage or 12 damage with Luke Skywalker, making the best use out of Luke's lightsaber. This is still a really fun deck to play, so please enjoy as we move into set 3. So starting out here with our early game cards, we are of course going to start with 3 Greedo. Greedo is going to be one of those cards that existed in set 1 that's probably going to be around for the rest of the game. 3 power for 1 cost is just too strong. It opens up and enables you to double play either turn 3 or turn 4. Dropping 2 units early game pre-Luke deploy can be what you need to stabilize and gain footing against the opponent before your Luke deploy, going into your Luke deploy. Greedo helps you do that. He could take out 2 units. He could potentially take out Sabine Leader. Greedo is just one of those standard cards that it's hard to cut. One of the cards that yellow decks did get in set 2 is of course Cloud Rider. Most of the yellow decks are slotting this card, and for good reason. Not only is it a great turn 1 play, potentially slowing down the game and taking out the opposing turn 1 play, it can help you push damage because it has 3 power. And then even into the mid and late game, you could potentially use this card to, say, take out a Pike Sentinel or other Sentinel card, help you push extra damage to take out the opposing leader. I've used it in many, many different ways. It's a great card, good at all stages of the game. So 3 of this, even though we can't shield it, much like Greedo, 3 of this makes sense just because of its usability going into the mid and late game. Now, another card that yellow hero did get is Grogu, and I've gone up and down on this card. It's pretty much always stayed at either 3 or 2 copies for me, but I did recently go down to 2 copies, mostly because in the matchups that Grogu is good, Grogu's great. Actually, Grogu can help you hard counter pretty much every Kylo Ren deck. Kylo Ren just can't do anything to Greedo. Kylo plays too slow for Greedo. His power is slow and gives you that action to respond to it with Grogu. Likewise, Kylo Ren himself, the leader, wants to usually save his attack until the end of combat, the end of the phase, so Grogu is great in that sense as well. However, in other matchups, Grogu is a big liability with his 0 power. In this deck in particular, it's very easy for decks that ambush to kill Grogu for free. Like if you're playing any deck that has a lot of ambush units, Grogu is definitely a liability in those matchups. It is decent in the Boba matchup. It is decent in the Sabine matchup. It's not good enough for me to have 3 of it. I think 2 is a good middle ground for this. We do have the 3rd one in the sideboard for, say, those matchups like Sabine or Kylo Ren that you're going to want the 3 Grogus. Continuing on with the turn 1 plays, we have 2 copies of Restored Arc. Actually, I'll talk about these together because they fill a similar role, and we play them both at 2 copies for the same reason, really. And this is something that is holding blue back as a color, specifically blue hero, because blue villain always has power of the dark side to fall back on. But blue hero, early game, is struggling outside of Ray. Ray can easily buff these guys up to 3 power. But when most of the turn 1 plays have either 3 HP or 3 power, these guys really struggle. Because they both only have 2 power. You can get into some sticky situations where, say, for example, if the opponent has initiative against you, if you drop one of these and the opponent has either a Battlefield Marine or an A-Wing, they can easily take out your turn 1 play and save their unit. I've had that come up very many times, and because of that, I actually dropped these down to both 2-ofs. They help with the restore. They're good units, especially Queel. The deck is mostly yellow. It's above 50%, close to 60% yellow. So you will draw often with Queel. However, because of their limited power, I do prefer the yellow early game units that all have 3 power. Even though I can't shield them, they still end up being better because they have more early game presence. Now going into the early game upgrades and events, we have 3 copies of Surprise Strike. This is a standard card. As the rule goes with yellow decks, never cut Surprise Strike. We are going to be seeing this card for the rest of the game in decks. 2 costs for 3 damage is incredible. Really, really strong card here. It allows you to trade up with units. I've done some pretty awesome plays. The other thing that Surprise Strike allows you to do, which is why I would never cut it and why we play it at 3, is it allows you to take your 4-drop play like Kanan and take out the opposing 7 HP leader like Boba. So that 3 damage for the trade up is just too valuable. We play this at 3 to end the game. Luke Skywalker with Luke's lightsaber hits for 10 with a Surprise Strike. Just 2 of those and you can win the game. Of course, we are still running 3 copies of Luke's lightsaber. If you are running Luke Skywalker, you need to be running 3 copies of Luke's lightsaber. There is literally no reason to run Luke Skywalker without Luke's lightsaber. You're better off running Rey if you don't want to run Luke's lightsaber. Just simply put, the whole power of Luke is coming from the lightsaber. So definitely run this at 3. I've won countless games by attaching Luke's lightsaber, healing up my Luke leader, being able to trade into, say, a Sentinel unit or just one of the leader units, and then just heal him back all that damage. If Surprise Strike never gets cut from yellow decks, then Spark of Rebellion never gets cut from yellow hero decks. 3 copies of Spark of Rebellion. This is mainly in here for the other mid-range and control matchups, but mostly it's in here to fish out the Rival's Fall or Takedown that could potentially take out our Luke leader or Power of the Dark Side. Just this card is here to protect your Luke deploy. I always try to save my Spark of Rebellion for the deploy turn, because then you can usually go Spark of Rebellion, Luke's lightsaber, and then either a 2-drop or maybe another 2 event like a Surprise Strike or something like that. That's what I try to do most often. Either that or I try to do the Spark of Rebellion with the forces with me on my Luke leader. So I always am trying to save my Spark of Rebellion for the Luke deploy to just safely deploy. You know, no ECL wreckers, none of that. It's always a good idea to save Spark of Rebellion for the deploy turn. And a recent add to help in the aggro matchup and the mid-range matchup is Shoot First. Now, in my testing, what I found was that Cunning just does not hit like it used to. Cunning at 6, at least. Well, Cunning in general, to be honest with you. Cunning was so good in set 1. It was like an S-tier card, clearly better than all the other double pip legendary events in set 1. However, there is so much ambush in the game now that what units the opponent has on the field matters less. We have Mauls, we have Timely Intervention with Wrecker and Poe. Things are coming out and ambushing and getting full value from the hand. And as such, spending 6 on a Cunning to disrupt the field isn't as impactful as it was in set 1. And that was one of the major changes that I made to the deck from set 1 to set 2. And one of the things I kind of struggled with, I was holding on to the Cunning for a long time. And Cunning used to just win against Red Hero. If you would get to 6, you could Cunning once or twice and just win. You can't do that anymore because of Timely, because of ECL Wrecker and things like that. It just doesn't work. And so Shoot First has replaced Cunning for me to help in the aggro and mid-range matchups to gain advantage on the board early game and enable you to get some footing against the opponent. So that way, going into the deploy turn, you can really just have units on the board to make the most use of shield. Shoot First also helps with that issue I mentioned earlier, how Restored Arc and Queel have 2 power. I've also used Shoot First with Grogu to kill like a Greedo or a Cloud Rider and things like that. There are a lot of cool things you can do with Shoot First. Great card and definitely worthy in this deck. And that's it for the early game plays. Now going into the mid-game plays, we are of course going to start with our best mid-game unit, which is Ezra Bridger. This guy is not going anywhere. He has synergy with Kanan. He is a Force unit for The Force is With Me. He has such strong staying power with his stat line of 3-4 and potential to draw you cards off the top of your deck. This guy is so strong. We're not seeing any replacement for this guy. Even into set 3, there is no card that's standing up to the power that is Ezra Bridger. Once you start using him and learning how to use him well, he's going to stay in your deck and you're going to love him. Another unit that I was really slow to adapt on and why I definitely didn't do well in the PQ season and the Store Showdown season, I did get a top 8 with this deck without the following unit, without the Village Protector at 3. And I feel like Village Protector is pretty much the greatest Sentinel unit for Luke Skywalker. Having a Sentinel with a shield is bad enough. Well, how about a Sentinel with 2 shields? The power of Luke Skywalker, the greatest thing about Luke Skywalker, and any Luke Skywalker player can tell you this, that is if you get one of those late game Sentinels and start getting a shield train going on the Sentinels. Like, for example, if on 6 you drop Chewbacca, you shield Chewbacca with Luke power, then deploy Luke, and then shield Chewbacca again with Luke attack. A double shielded Chewbacca is pretty much the hardest thing for your opponent to deal with in the world. The problem with Sentinels like Chewbacca and Obi-Wan Kenobi is they come out too late. They come out too late against aggro decks. They come out too late against mid-range. Leaders are deploying before they come out. You're wasting all of your resources and just praying the opponent doesn't have a Waylay or something like that, or a Cunning. The Boba yellow matchup is very, very, very difficult for this reason. So we have to use the early game units to burn through their resources, limit them, slow them down so we can get to our deploy. And we can do a similar shielding train, like I said, with this unit. So this unit is pretty much the greatest unit that Luke Skywalker got. Luke Skywalker uses Village Protector way better than Rey does. The difference between a 2-2 shielded and a 3-3 shielded is not much. But the difference between a 2-2 shielded and a 2-2 double shield is massive. Luke Skywalker loves this unit. I was sleeping on this unit for the longest time, and that was my own mistake. We got to learn from our mistakes. It wouldn't be mid-game plays without showing the Millennium Falcon. This card is a powerhouse in the Red Hero matchup. It is okay in Boba, not the greatest, but it does kill some of their units. One of the things I do like in the Boba matchup is you can play down Millennium Falcon and hold a Surprise Strike to have the Millennium Falcon take out the Fire Spray. It definitely is good to do that, especially if you can get the shield on the Millennium Falcon prior to them playing Fire Spray. Really great to do that. Other than that, it just helps you push out extra damage. You do need to be smart with it because it costs you a resource to keep up. So especially getting close to the deploy turn, you have to consider whether you're bouncing this or not. It is a fairly difficult card to play outside of Han Solo, but the power that it brings to the deck is worth the 3 slots. Going into our 4-drops now, of course, the greatest 4-drop that Blue has is Kanan. Everyone's slotting 3 of this guy, and for good reason. His stat line's amazing. He has up to restore 3 in most decks if you get that 2 mil with Ezra in play. But usually he's giving you 1 or 2 with his amazing stat line. Throw a Forces with me on him, and he runs into any mid-game unit. Deploy him with Luke. Add shields to him. He's excellent. You have to learn lines of play to make sure that you're sticking him. The opponent is going to kill him. The opponent is going to use takedown on him. So just be aware that that's coming to know how to play around it. With the resurgence of Lurking Tai, we, of course, answer Lurking Tai with our Azatuk Liberator gunship. Lurking Tai is in and out of the meta depending on where you are, your region, how many people are running, say, Tarkin, or how many people like to run the space variants of Boba. Lurking Tai is there. Well, we answer Lurking Tai with Azatuk Liberator gunship. Excellent card. Answer those red 3s. Answer the A-Wings. Just a great card for the current metagame. So that's why we run 2 main deck because of the meta. Closing out our mid-game units, we have a single copy of Kira. The reason that we run the single copy of Kira, this has gone down for me. I used to run it at 3 and then at 2. For a long time, I ran her at 2. I dropped her to 1 because, again, of there's so many ambush units. And when your opponent ambushes into this and trades in and just cleanly gets their cards back, it feels real bad. But however, it does let you disrupt your opponent. And the reason I play this is because it is my supporting card for the Spark of Rebellion on the Luke deploy turn. So if I'm fishing for my Spark of Rebellion on the Luke deploy and I can't find it, I will settle for the Kira. Kira will let you Luke's lightsaber with her on the Luke deploy turn. So that's why it's really good in Luke specifically. Sometimes I will drop her on resource 5 with a shield. So Luke does use Kira really well, probably better than most other leaders, because you can shield her if you drop her on 5 resource, which I do pretty often. So decent card. I could see this at 2. I have it at 1 right now because of space. Pretty much the greatest blue card to be released, starting out with our events, is Fell the Dragon. This card answers Wrecker, it answers Poe, it answers Maul, it answers Reinforcement Walker. There are so many cards that Fell the Dragon answers. Luke Skywalker units. It's just any unit that you could think of that you want to answer, Fell the Dragon answers. This is just a great meta card and will help you push into the late game, push out the last damage that you need to seal the game. With the addition of Grogu into the deck, the Forces with me is becoming a better and better card. I did run this at 3 for the longest time, but however, it costing 4 makes it awkward to play sometimes, especially in decks that like Boba, that can waylay you and take away all the value that you gained from the Forces with me. That's why I did drop it down to 2. It is still an excellent card. You can see the number of pumps that we have. We have the 3 surprise strikes, the 2 shoot first, and the 2 Forces with me, along with the 3 Luke's lightsaber. This deck can burst a lot of damage very quickly once you get to the Luke deploy turn. Great card for adding shields and really disrupting the opponent. Going into our late game units now, we have, I'll talk about these together because they fill a similar role. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Chewbacca. Like I said, these fill a similar role, which is those late game Sentinel plays. I talked earlier about the shield train that you could run on your units to just make your opponent cry. It's really upsetting Like when you're jumping through hoops to push through the shields of your sentinels, and then you keep attacking every turn with Luke Skywalker, putting more and more shields on your sentinels. Just very, very strong. In the right situation, these sentinels hit so amazing. But there are many situations that limit them. Waylays, Cunnings. So that's why we do only run 2 of each of these, because there are many situations where they're not great, but when they hit hard, and they will win you games. Now, the final cards that we play in the deck, the final late game units we have to close out our deck and our deck power, is 3 Luke Skywalker units and 1 copy of Han Solo unit. Now, Luke Skywalker is, of course, the premium 7-drop. This guy, he just wins. He just wins games. He'll kill you a unit. He has a 9 damage swing with 6 damage and 3 restore. He combos just as well with Luke's lightsaber, healing and shielding him. Just an amazing card. Fits perfectly within the deck. Likewise, we are additionally adding 1 copy of Han Solo unit. That is in here because I wanted a little bit more late game, because with the addition of Grogu's into the deck can slow down the game pretty well and play a controlling game. And we wanted to make sure that we were drawing our late game units. We do only run 1 of the Han Solo because there are many situations that Han Solo unit isn't going to hit very well. However, he does one-shot Poe, he one-shots Wrecker, he one-shots Maul, he does one-shot Obi-Wan Kenobi. However, the one guy he doesn't one-shot is Snoke, which is definitely a problem. If Snoke is on the field, Han Solo cannot kill it. So definitely consider that. But that's what our Luke Skywalker is for and why we play 3 of it. Now, going into our sideboard, what we would add in aggro matchups. In aggro matchups, we play... I mentioned earlier that I ran the Azatec Liberator gunship, the 3rd one in the side. That's not true. I actually added the Concord Dawn Interceptor into the side for certain matchups, namely Boba. Boba, it has a tougher time getting around the Sentinel in space than the Azatec is adding value. For example, Conquer Dawn is just a hard answer to 7th Fleet Defender. It can help you slow down Fett's Fire Spray. So because of those reasons, I dropped Azatec out of the side in favor of the Conquer Dawn. However, I didn't want to main deck Conquer Dawn because 1 power is terrible in Luke Skywalker. You really only want it in very specific matchups, so that's why it's in the side. We do have the Grogu in there for the hard aggro matches to put in to help us get more early game, and then likewise the 3rd copy of Shoot First for those low-to-the-ground matches where a single unit trade and you living could win you the game. And what I'm usually dropping to add these in, I'll drop copies of the Forces with me, because it's hard to play the Forces with me against a deck that's low to the ground. Usually you would much rather to spend 4 resources on a unit to get that board presence on the field versus doing the Forces with me. So I'll drop out the Forces with me, and I'll potentially drop out maybe the Han unit and some late game as well, like Obi-Wan Kenobi. I know that like against Boba and against Sabine, Obi-Wan Kenobi is just not going to hit well. I want to spend my 6 resources on something else. So that's what I'll usually drop for these. Of course, it wouldn't be a sideboard in today's day and age without 2 copies of Confiscate. This is to answer Boba's armor, and this is to answer Traitorous. So Traitorous and Boba's armor is the reason that we play this, and also why we don't run Bamboozle, because of course, if we would run Bamboozle, Traitorous, they're just going to replay it, and Boba's armor, they're just going to replay it. So that is why we do the Confiscate over the Bamboozle. Likewise, for the late game plays, so if I'm playing a control deck or a super late game deck, I add in potentially all of these. The 2nd copy of Han Solo unit, 2 copies of Change of Heart, and the 3rd Fel the Dragon. The 3rd Fel the Dragon is, of course, for the hyper control decks that are going to stall you out and play all those late game units, the Avengers and whatnot, the Devastators. You need the third copy of Fel to answer those. Likewise, the second Han Solo is in for matchups that you know you're going to get to Han, and you know he's going to just dominate the board. So, for example, Green Boba would be a great matchup to add the Han in there, because Han unit pretty much answers every single unit that Boba plays. The change of hearts are in here to, again, for those late game decks. It was a question of what late game event that I wanted to play in this deck. I felt change of heart was the best, because usually this deck is falling short of just a couple damage, and that's where Change of Heart comes in. But also in the Palpatine matchup, it will let you steal back a stolen unit. Lets you play aggressively, knowing that you have that Change of Heart in there, so that way you can steal back your unit. You can play aggressively, knowing that they're going to steal your unit, and you could just take it back. So I love this deck. I love Luke Skywalker. He's my favorite leader. Definitely, I have the most played. I think this deck is a very, very solid Tier 2. It was Tier 1 in Set 1, and it just lost because the unit quality that the other decks have been gaining, in compared to this one, is just not there. That's really where this deck dropped down a tier. It's upsetting that the deck definitely lost power, and I feel weaker this set. But hopefully in future subsequent sets, heroes get more power, we get more units. I'm really excited about that new Sabine Wren that's coming out that can't be attacked. That's going to be a really interesting card to play, so we'll have to see how that works out. So we're going to be coming out with tons of new Star Wars Unlimited videos for the new set, Set 3, that's coming out. So if you want to get all the insider information about Set 3 and what's coming on the horizon for Star Wars Unlimited, please hit that like and subscribe button. And as always, turn your dial to Random Number Gaming for the best gaming guides and content.